Queen Lyra stood on the balcony of her palace, watching the sky turn red. It was not a beautiful sunset. The red came from the fires burning across her capital city. The devourer swarm had reached the outer territories of Velrax's prime, and soon they would be here. She was tall and elegant, with silver skin that glowed softly in the dying light. Her royal robes, once pristine white, were now stained with dust and ash. Behind her, General Vex entered the room. He was her oldest military advisor, a warrior who had served her family for 50 years. His face showed the weight of defeat. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "the Northern Fleet has fallen. We lost another 6,000 soldiers today." Lyra closed her eyes. 6,000 more lives, 6,000 more families destroyed. The Velrathi Empire had once been the greatest civilization in this sector of the galaxy. They controlled 12 star systems. Their technology was advanced. Their culture was rich and ancient. They had always believed they were superior to other species, and because of this belief, they had no friends. They had no allies. They stood alone. And now they were dying alone. The devourer swarm had appeared 3 years ago. No one knew where they came from. They were not a civilization. They were a hunger. Living ships made of flesh and bone that consumed everything in their path. Planets, moons, space stations, entire populations, all devoured and converted into more swarm creatures. The Velrathi had tried to fight. They had won battles at first, destroying dozens of swarm vessels. But for every ship destroyed, 2 more appeared. The swarm learned from each battle, adapted, grew stronger. One by one, the Velrathi worlds fell. Velrax 7, a beautiful ocean world. Velrax 3, home to ancient libraries. Velrax 9, where Lyra had spent her childhood summers. All consumed, all silent. Now only the home world remained, and the swarm was closing in. "How many soldiers do we have left?" Lyra asked. 40,000, Your Majesty, maybe less. Many are wounded, supplies are running low, food, medicine, weapons, everything is nearly gone. Lyra turned to face him. "How long can we hold?" General Vex hesitated. He was a proud warrior who had never admitted defeat in his life. But now he spoke the truth. "Perhaps a week, maybe 10 days if we are lucky. But, Your Majesty, the swarm will not stop with us. They will spread to other systems. Other species. This is not just our extinction. It is the beginning of something worse." Lyra walked back into the throne room. The room had once been filled with light and laughter. Now it was dark and quiet. Most of her court had evacuated or been killed. Only the most loyal remained. She sat on her throne, feeling the weight of her crown. It had been worn by 43 queens before her. She would be the last. "We should send a message," she said suddenly. General Vex looked confused. "A message? To whom, Your Majesty? We have no allies. No one will help us." "Send it to everyone," Lyra said, her voice growing stronger. "Every species we know of. Every civilization we have ever encountered. Send it across the galaxy. Tell them what is happening here. Tell them about the swarm. Ask them for help." "But, Your Majesty, we have spent centuries keeping others at a distance. We told them we did not need them. We treated them as inferior. Why would anyone respond?" Lyra stood up. "Because they should know what is coming, and because even if they do not help us, perhaps they will be warned. Perhaps they will prepare. Perhaps they will survive where we failed." She paused. "And because I have to try, I cannot let my people die without at least asking if anyone cares." General Vex bowed. "As you command, Your Majesty." The message was prepared over the next few hours. The best linguists translated it into 847 different languages. It was simple and honest. It explained who the Velrathi were. It described the devourer swarm. It showed images of the destruction. And it ended with a plea. "Help us. Please. We are dying." Lyra watched as the transmission was sent. It broadcast in all directions, moving at faster-than-light speeds, reaching across hundreds of light years. Then she waited. The first day passed. No response. The second day passed. Silence. On the third day, the swarm attacked the southern continent. 20,000 civilians died in the first hour. Lyra could hear the explosions from her palace. The fourth day brought more death. The Velrathi fleet was down to 17 ships. They could not hold much longer. On the fifth day, Lyra stopped hoping. She called her remaining advisors together. We need to prepare final messages for the archives, so that someone might know we existed, so that our culture, our history, our art might not be completely forgotten. She spent hours recording her message. She talked about her people, their achievements, their mistakes. She apologized for their arrogance. She warned about the swarm. She ended by saying that if anyone ever found this message, they should remember the Velrathi not as they were in their pride, but as they were at the end, when they finally understood that no one can stand alone. On the sixth day, General Vex came to her chambers. He looked different. There was something in his eyes she had not seen in months. Hope. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice shaking. "We received a response." Lyra stood up quickly. "What? From whom?" "A species called humans, from a planet called Earth. Their message just arrived. It says, 'Message received. Help is on the way. United Earth Command.'" Lyra felt her legs go weak. She sat down. "Humans? I have heard of them. They are young. Very young. They only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They are small, weak. Why would they come?" "I do not know, Your Majesty, but they are coming." Lyra looked at the message again and again. 3 simple sentences. But in those sentences was something the Velrathi had not felt in years. Hope. Someone had heard them. Someone was coming. She did not know if these humans could help. She did not know if they would arrive in time. But they were coming, and that meant something. Outside, the sky continued to burn. The swarm continued its advance. But now, somewhere in the darkness of space, help was on its way. Queen Lyra allowed herself to hope, just a little, that perhaps her people might survive after all. The space around Velrax Prime shimmered and tore open. Ships emerged from hyperspace, their engines glowing bright blue against the darkness. They were human ships, sleek and metallic, with Earth's flag painted on their hulls. The UES Horizon led the fleet, a massive battleship surrounded by cruisers, destroyers, and carrier vessels filled with fighters. On the bridge of the Horizon, Commander Tay watched the view screen. He was a tall man with short black hair and calm eyes. He had fought in 3 wars, but nothing had prepared him for this. The planet below was covered in fires. Pieces of destroyed ships floated in orbit. And beyond the planet, like a dark stain spreading across space, was the Devourer swarm. "My God," whispered Captain G, standing beside him. She was his second in command, a brilliant woman who had never shown fear in battle. But now her hands trembled slightly. "There are so many of them." The swarm ships were unlike anything in human records. They were organic, living vessels that looked like enormous insects crossed with deep-sea creatures. They pulsed and moved like muscles. Some were small, the size of fighters. Others were massive, kilometers long, their surfaces covered in teeth and claws and eyes. "Get me a count," Tay said. "Sensors show approximately 15,000 swarm vessels in this system," reported Lieutenant Juan from the tactical station. He was young, barely 25, but he was the best pilot in the fleet. "More are arriving every hour." "And the Velrathi forces?" 17 ships remaining. 40,000 ground forces. They are barely holding the capital city." Lieutenant Juan paused. "Commander, they cannot last more than a day. Maybe less." Tay nodded slowly. "Open a communication channel to the Velrathi command. And prepare all fighter squadrons for launch. Tell engineering I want every weapon system online." A moment later, a holographic image appeared on the bridge. It showed a tall alien woman with silver skin and large purple eyes. She wore a crown and looked exhausted. Behind her stood an older alien in military armor. "I am Commander Tay of the United Earth Ship Horizon," he said. "We received your distress call." Queen Lyra stared at him. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she spoke, her voice filled with disbelief. "You came. You actually came." "Yes, Your Majesty. We came as fast as we could." "But why?" she asked. "You do not know us. We never helped your species. We never offered friendship. Why would you risk your lives for strangers?" Tay smiled slightly. "Because you asked, and because it is the right thing to do." Lyra looked at General Vex beside her. The old warrior looked equally confused. "Commander Tay, you do not understand what you are facing. The swarm cannot be stopped. They have destroyed 11 of our worlds. Billions of my people are dead. Your small fleet cannot change that." "Maybe not," Tay agreed. "But we are going to try. Now I need to coordinate with your military. The swarm will reach your capital in approximately 72 hours. We need to prepare." Captain G stepped forward. "Your Majesty, may I speak with General Vex? We need to combine our forces and create a unified defense strategy." General Vex looked skeptical. "With respect, Captain, humans have no major war victories on record. Your species has only been in space for 50 years. What can you possibly teach us about warfare?" G smiled politely. "We have been fighting wars on Earth for thousands of years, General. We have learned a few things about survival." Over the next hours, the human fleet moved into defensive positions. Captain G and General Vex worked together, arguing and planning. The Velrathi military was professional and experienced, but they were exhausted. They had been fighting for 3 years without rest. The humans were fresh, energetic, and full of strange new ideas. Dr. Na, the chief medical officer, transported down to the planet's surface with her team. She was a kind woman with gentle hands and a determined spirit. When she saw the Velrathi field hospitals, she was shocked. Thousands of wounded soldiers lay on floors with minimal treatment. Supplies were almost gone. "We need to help them immediately," she told her nurses. "Set up medical stations. Use our supplies. Save everyone you can." The human medical teams worked for hours without stopping. They treated Velrathi soldiers, sharing medicine and food. The Velrathi were confused. Why would these strangers use their own supplies to help aliens? One wounded Velrathi soldier asked Dr. Na, "Why do you care? We are not your people." Dr. Na smiled as she bandaged his wounds. "All people are our people," she said simply. Meanwhile, Engineer Yoon was working with the Velrathi technicians. He was a genius with machines, able to understand and fix almost anything. The Velrathi showed him their weapon systems, their shields, their damaged ships. Yun studied everything quickly. "Your technology is more advanced than ours in many ways," he admitted. "But you are using it inefficiently. Let me show you some modifications." The Velrathi engineers watched as Yun improved their power distribution, enhanced their shield generators, and repaired systems they thought were beyond fixing. He worked without sleep, driven by the knowledge that every minute counted. On the 3rd day, Lieutenant Huan took his fighter squadron on a patrol around the planet. The Velrathi had their own pilots, led by Princess Sarah, the Queen's daughter. She was fierce and proud, a warrior who had shot down 50 swarm vessels personally. "Human fighters, this is Princess Sarah," she called over the radio. "Stay in formation and follow my lead. Do not engage unless ordered." Huan smiled inside his cockpit. "Understood, Princess. But with respect, we have some experience with this." They encountered a small swarm patrol, about 20 vessels. Princess Sarah immediately organized a traditional attack formation, but Juan had other ideas. He broke formation and dove straight into the enemy, his wingmen following. They flew in chaotic patterns, unpredictable and wild, confusing the swarm ships. "What are you doing?" Sarah shouted. "That is suicide!" But it worked. The swarm vessels collided with each other, trying to track the humans. Juan's squadron destroyed 15 enemies without losing a single fighter. Princess Sarah was amazed. "How did you do that?" she asked after they returned to base. "We do not fight like you," Juan explained. "We do not use perfect formations and logical strategies. We use chaos, unpredictability. We adapt constantly. It is how humans survived on Earth. It is how we fight." That night, Queen Lyra met with Commander Tay again. She looked at him with new respect. "Your people are impressive," she admitted. "My soldiers say your Marines fight without stopping. Your doctors treat our wounded as if they were your own. Your engineers fix things our best technicians gave up on, and your pilots fly like madmen but somehow survive." Tay laughed. "We are not perfect, Your Majesty. But we do not give up easily. Humans are stubborn. We do not know when to quit." "But why?" Lyra asked again. "Why fight so hard for us?" Tay's expression became serious. "Because 200 years ago we almost destroyed ourselves. Wars, pollution, hate. We nearly made Earth uninhabitable. We learned something from that time. We learned that the only way to survive is to stand together. All of us. Every species. Every world. When one falls, we all become weaker. When one stands, we all become stronger." Lyra was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "We thought we were superior. We thought we did not need anyone. We were wrong." "Yes," Tay said gently. "But you can learn, and you can change. That is what makes any species strong, the ability to admit mistakes and grow." Outside the palace, the sky grew dark. The swarm was coming closer. But now the Velrathi were not alone. The humans stood beside them, ready to fight, ready to die if necessary. And in that moment, Queen Lyra understood something her people had forgotten. Hope was not found in standing alone. It was found in standing together. The alarm woke everyone at dawn. The swarm had arrived early, catching the defenders off guard. Thousands of organic ships poured into the system, blotting out the stars. The largest vessels were massive, like floating mountains of flesh and bone. They pulsed with unnatural life, covered in weapons that fired living projectiles. Commander Tay rushed to the bridge, still pulling on his uniform. "Status report. The swarm is attacking on all fronts," Captain G said, her fingers flying across her console. "They are not following any predictable pattern. It is like they knew we were waiting." "Because they did," said tech specialist Juan, a young man with glasses who rarely left his computer station. "I have been monitoring their communications. The swarm has a hive mind. They learn from every battle. They knew humans were here, so they adapted their attack." "Can you disrupt their communications?" Tay asked. Juan thought for a moment. "Maybe. Give me time." But time was something they did not have. The combined fleet of Velrathi and human ships moved to intercept. In space, the battle was chaos. Swarm vessels moved like living things, dodging and weaving. When they were hit, they bled. When they died, they screamed. Lieutenant Juan led his fighter squadron into the thickest part of the battle. The Velrathi pilots flew beside them now, learning the human style of unpredictable combat. Princess Sarah was in the lead Velrathi fighter, her voice calm over the radio despite the danger. "Target the larger vessels," she ordered. "Concentrate fire on their weak points." "Negative," Juan replied. "We take out the small ones first. Remove their swarm coordination." "That makes no tactical sense," Sarah argued. "Trust me," Juan said. "Humans do not always make sense. That is our advantage." They dove into the enemy formation, firing at everything that moved. The small swarm ships tried to surround them, but the human fighters split up, each one flying a different pattern. It was madness, but it worked. The swarm could not predict where they would be. Within minutes, dozens of small swarm vessels were destroyed. Sarah watched in amazement. "You are insane," she said. "But it is working." On the planet's surface, Corporal Day led his Marine unit to defend the evacuation zones. He was a big man with a scarred face and gentle eyes. He had fought on Earth during the resource wars and knew what real combat felt like. Behind him, 2,000 Marines formed defensive positions around the civilian shelters. The swarm ground forces were nightmares made real. They looked like giant insects mixed with wolves, with too many legs and jaws that could bite through steel. They moved fast and felt no fear. They existed only to consume. "Here they come," someone shouted. The first wave hit the human lines like a tsunami. The Marines fired continuously, their weapons cutting down the creatures. But for every one that fell, 2 more appeared. Corporal Day fought at the front, his rifle never stopping. He had been fighting for 6 hours, but he showed no signs of slowing down. A Velrathi officer named Commander Mira watched from the command post. She had been a soldier for 30 years and had never seen anything like this. The humans fought with an intensity that seemed impossible. They did not retreat. They did not surrender. Even when wounded, they kept fighting. "How do they do it?" she asked Dr. Na, who was treating casualties in a field hospital nearby. Dr. Na looked up from her patient, her hands covered in blood. "Do what?" "Fight so long without rest. Your Corporal Day has been in combat for 16 hours. Most soldiers would collapse." Dr. Na smiled tiredly. "Humans evolved on Earth. Our planet was not kind to us. We had to survive ice ages, predators, diseases, disasters. We learned to keep going when everything told us to stop. It is in our nature now. We do not give up." In the palace, Queen Lyra watched the battle on multiple screens. Her city was burning. Her people were dying. But the humans were holding the line. They were buying time for the evacuation. Thousands of Velrathi civilians were being moved to underground shelters, and the humans were ensuring they made it safely. Princess Sarah returned from her fighter mission and came directly to the throne room. Her flight suit was torn, and she had a burn on her arm, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "Mother, you should see how the humans fight," she said. "They are fearless, crazy but fearless. I want to learn their ways." Lyra smiled. Her daughter had never shown respect for another species before. "Perhaps you will get your chance." Meanwhile, Tech Specialist 1 was working on his plan to disrupt the swarm communications. He studied their biosignals, trying to understand how the hive mind worked. It was like nothing human science had encountered. The swarm did not use radio or quantum signals. They used something organic, something that operated on multiple dimensions simultaneously. Engineer Yun joined him. "What do you need?" "A way to create interference," Juan said. "Something that can disrupt their biosignals without affecting our own communications." Yun thought for a moment. "What about sound? Specific frequencies that disrupt organic nervous systems?" Juan's eyes widened. "That could work, but we need to test it." They worked through the night, building a prototype weapon. It was a sonic emitter that produced frequencies designed to scramble the swarm's neural connections. By morning, they had created 3 devices. They mounted them on small ships and sent them into battle. The effect was immediate. When the sonic weapons activated, the nearby swarm vessels began moving erratically. They collided with each other, fired randomly, lost their coordination. The hive mind was being disrupted. "It is working!" one shouted. "Commander, we can use this!" Captain G immediately ordered more sonic weapons to be manufactured. Within hours, every human ship had one. The tide of battle began to shift. But the swarm was learning too. The larger vessels began producing a counter-frequency that blocked the sonic weapons. The advantage lasted only a few hours before the swarm adapted. Still, it had bought them precious time. On the ground, Corporal Day's position was about to be overrun. The swarm ground forces had broken through the eastern defenses and were pouring toward the civilian shelters. Day and his Marines were the last line of defense. "Fall back!" someone shouted. "No!" Day said firmly. "We hold here. If we run, those civilians die." Princess Sarah arrived with her royal guard, 200 elite Velrathi warriors. She had never fought alongside humans before, but she took position next to Corporal Day. "We will hold together," she said. Day looked at her and nodded. Together. The battle that followed was brutal. Humans and Velrathi fought side by side, protecting each other, covering each other's weaknesses. Day saw Princess Sarah take a claw strike meant for one of his Marines. He pulled her back and killed the creature. Later, she saved him when 3 swarm beasts attacked him at once. When the fighting finally ended, Day and Sarah stood among the bodies of hundreds of swarm creatures. They were both wounded, exhausted, covered in blood. But behind them, the civilians were safe. "Your species is remarkable," Sarah said, breathing hard. "You could have retreated, saved yourselves. But you stayed." Day shrugged. Someone had to. That evening, Commander Tay met with Queen Lyra in the throne room. The battle had lasted 48 hours without stopping. Both sides had suffered terrible losses. 3 human ships had been destroyed. Thousands of soldiers were dead. "You have sacrificed so much," Lyra said quietly. "Too much. This is not your war." "Yes, it is," Tay replied. "The moment we received your call, it became our war. That is what it means to be human. When someone needs help, we help, even if it costs us everything." Lyra looked at him with tears in her eyes. "We were so wrong. For so long we believed we were better than other species. We believed we did not need anyone. But you have shown us what true strength is. It is not found in standing alone. It is found in standing together." Outside, the battle continued. The swarm was relentless. But now, humans and Velrathi fought as one, united against the darkness, proving that hope could survive even in the worst times. The battle had been raging for 2 days without stopping. The skies above Velrax Prime were filled with burning ships and explosions. On the ground, every street was a battlefield. The humans and Velrathi fought together now, trusting each other with their lives, but they were losing. Commander Tay stood on the bridge, looking at the damage reports. 3 human ships destroyed, 7,000 soldiers dead, countless wounded. The Velrathi losses were even higher, and still the swarm kept coming, wave after wave without end. "We cannot hold much longer," Captain G said quietly. "We are running out of ammunition, fuel, and people." Tay knew she was right, but he also knew that giving up was not an option. "We keep fighting," he said. "Every hour we hold is another hour those civilians have to evacuate." A communication came through. It was Dr. Na from the field hospital. Her voice was tired but determined. "Commander, we have over 3,000 wounded down here. I need more medical supplies and more staff. We are overwhelmed." "We will send what we can," Tay promised. But he knew they had very little left to send. Suddenly, space lit up with new arrivals. More ships were dropping out of hyperspace. For a terrible moment, everyone feared it was more swarm vessels. But then they saw the flags. Earth flags. It was the Second Fleet. Admiral Kwan appeared on the view screen. She was a stern woman with gray hair and fierce eyes. Behind her, 30 warships moved into formation. Carriers, battleships, destroyers, and support vessels. It was not enough to win the war, but it was enough to give them a chance. "Sorry we are late," Admiral Kwan said with a slight smile. "We came as fast as we could." Tay felt relief wash over him. "Admiral, you are right on time." With the reinforcements, the battle stabilized. The human fleet now had the strength to push back against the swarm, but they still could not destroy the enemy completely. The swarm kept regenerating, adapting, learning. For every ship they destroyed, more appeared. In the science lab aboard the Horizon, scientist Hay was working on the problem. She was a xenobiologist, an expert in alien life forms. She had been studying the swarm for days, analyzing every piece of data they collected, and she had discovered something important. "Commander Tay, I need to show you something," she said urgently. Tay came to the lab. Hay pulled up her research on the screen. "The swarm is not just a collection of individual creatures. They are all connected to a central nexus, a primary organism that coordinates everything. It is like a brain controlling billions of cells. If we destroy the nexus, the entire swarm will lose cohesion." "Where is this nexus?" Tay asked. "Inside the largest swarm vessel." Hay pointed to the image. "That ship there. The one that looks like a massive organic fortress. The nexus is at its core, protected by millions of drone creatures." Captain G studied the image. "It would be a suicide mission. The ship is 3 kilometers long and filled with swarm defenders. No one could fight their way to the center." "Then it will be a suicide mission," Tay said calmly. "I will lead the strike team myself." "No," said a voice from the doorway. It was Queen Lyra. She had been listening. "This is my responsibility, my people, my war. I should lead this mission." "With respect, Your Majesty, you are needed here to lead your people," Tay replied. "I am a soldier. This is what I do." Princess Sarah stepped forward. "Then I will go with you. If this is how we save my world, I want to be part of it." Captain G looked at them both. "Or we do this together. Humans and Velrathi, like we have been fighting all along. A combined strike team has a better chance of success." Admiral Kwan nodded in agreement. "G is right. This is not a mission for one person or one species. We do this together or not at all." Over the next few hours, they assembled the strike team. Corporal Day volunteered immediately, along with 50 of his best Marines. Princess Sarah brought her royal guard, the finest Velrathi warriors. Tech Specialist 1 joined to handle any technology problems. Lieutenant Juan would lead the fighter escort that would create an opening. Before the mission launched, Tay gathered the team. "I will not lie to you. This will be the most dangerous thing any of us have ever done. Many of us will not come back. But if we succeed, we save this world and maybe many others. Are you ready?" The Marines and Velrathi warriors shouted their agreement. They were ready. Lieutenant Juan launched first with 200 fighters, half human and half Velrathi. Princess Sarah flew with them, her skills now combined with human tactics. They hit the massive swarm vessel with everything they had, creating a storm of explosions and chaos. The goal was to draw the swarm's attention away from the boarding craft. "Go, go, go!" Juan shouted as he made another pass, his fighter taking heavy damage. The boarding craft, a heavily armored transport, raced toward the swarm vessel. It crashed through the outer hull, and the strike team poured out. Immediately, they were surrounded by swarm creatures. The corridors were organic, pulsing with life, covered in slime and something that looked like veins. The smell was overwhelming. Corporal Day fired his rifle continuously, cutting down creatures that looked like a nightmare mixture of insects and wolves. Beside him, Velrathi warriors used their energy weapons, which burned through swarm flesh. They moved forward slowly, fighting for every meter. "This is insane!" shouted one of the Marines. "Stay focused," Day replied. "Keep moving." Tech Specialist 1 used a device to track the Nexus biosignature. "We need to go deeper. The Nexus is in the center of the ship, maybe 2 kilometers ahead." 2 kilometers through hell. They fought their way forward, losing people with every step. A Marine named Bay was pulled into the walls by tentacles and disappeared. A Velrathi warrior named Kira was crushed by a falling piece of the ship, but the others kept moving. Princess Sarah fought with incredible skill, her training and new human techniques making her deadly. She stayed close to Corporal Day, and they protected each other like they had during the ground battles. A bond had formed between them, respect and trust earned through shared combat. Behind them, Engineer Yun worked on another plan. If the strike team failed, there needed to be a backup. He began overloading the reactors of the damaged human ships, creating massive electromagnetic bombs. It was dangerous, but it might disrupt the swarm long enough to retreat. Commander Mira led what remained of the Velrathi fleet in a diversionary attack on the other side of the swarm formation. Her ships were old and damaged, but she pushed them hard, drawing enemy fire away from the strike team. "For Velrath!" she shouted. "For our future!" Inside the Nexus ship, the strike team reached a massive chamber. It was like standing inside a living cathedral. The walls pulsed with biolight, and in the center, floating in some kind of organic fluid, was the Nexus. It was huge, maybe 50 meters across, covered in what looked like eyes and neural connections. It was beautiful and horrifying at the same time. As they approached, the Nexus spoke. Not with sound, but directly into their minds. Its voice was cold and ancient. "Foolish creatures, you cannot stop us. We are eternal. We are inevitable. We will consume everything." "Not today," Captain G said, raising her weapon. But the Nexus had one last defense. The walls of the chamber began moving, releasing thousands of guardian creatures. These were different from the normal swarm, larger and more intelligent. The battle that followed was desperate. The strike team formed a circle, fighting in all directions. Corporal Day was hit in the leg but kept fighting. Princess Sarah dragged him to cover and bandaged the wound quickly. "Stay alive, human," she said. "I am not done learning from you yet." Tech specialist Juan managed to get close to the Nexus. He carried a device, a virus he had designed specifically to attack the swarm's bio-network. But he needed time to upload it, and the creatures were closing in. "Cover me!" he shouted. The entire team focused their fire on the approaching creatures, giving Juan the seconds he needed. He plugged the device into a neural connection and activated it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Nexus began to scream, a sound that filled their minds with pain. The virus was working, spreading through the swarm's network like a disease, but the Nexus was fighting back, trying to purge the infection. It was a battle of technology versus biology, and no one knew who would win. The Nexus screamed inside their minds, a sound that was not really sound, but something deeper and more terrible. Tech Specialist 1 held onto his device, watching the upload progress. 70%, 80%. The virus was spreading through the swarm's network, but the Nexus was fighting back hard. All around them, the strike team fought desperately. Corporal Day fired his rifle until it overheated, then switched to his sidearm. Princess Sarah stood back to back with him, her energy blade cutting through creature after creature. Captain G coordinated the defense, her tactical mind finding patterns in the chaos. "Juan, how much longer?" she shouted over the noise. "Almost there. 90%. A massive guardian creature broke through their defensive line. It was 3 times larger than the others, with armor-plated hide and claws that could tear through steel. It charged directly at Juan. Corporal Day threw himself in the way, taking a massive claw strike to his chest. The blow threw him back several meters. "Day!" Princess Sarah screamed. She attacked the creature with fury, her blade finding the weak points between its armor plates. Other Marines joined her, concentrating fire until the creature finally fell. Juan's device beeped. 100%! The virus is uploaded! The Nexus let out one final scream, and then something changed. The guardian creatures stopped attacking. They stood still for a moment, confused, like puppets whose strings had been cut. Then they collapsed. Throughout the chamber, the swarm defenders were falling, their connection to the hive mind severed. "It is working," Captain G said. "We need to finish this now." Princess Sarah carried an ancient weapon, something passed down through 43 generations of Velrothi queens. It was a crystalline blade that could cut through anything, powered by some technology her people no longer fully understood. She ran toward the Nexus. The Nexus tried to defend itself, sending out psychic attacks that would have paralyzed most beings. But Sarah had been trained since childhood to resist mental attacks. She pushed through the pain and drove the blade deep into the Nexus's core. The reaction was immediate. The Nexus exploded in a wave of bioenergy, throwing everyone back. The walls of the chamber began to collapse. The entire ship was dying. "Everyone out! Now!" Commander Tay ordered. They ran back through the corridors they had fought through, carrying their wounded. Corporal Day could barely walk. His chest wound, bleeding heavily, but Princess Sarah supported him. Behind them, the ship was tearing itself apart. Outside, Lieutenant Juan saw the massive swarm vessel beginning to break apart. "All fighters, clear the area. The big one is going down." The Nexus ship exploded in a massive fireball. The shockwave destroyed dozens of nearby swarm vessels. And then something even more dramatic happened. Throughout the system, every swarm vessel began acting erratically. Without the Nexus to coordinate them, they lost cohesion. They fired randomly, crashed into each other, fled in all directions. "Press the attack," Admiral Kwan ordered. "Hit them while they are disorganized." The human and Velrothi fleets attacked with renewed energy. Without the hive mind directing them, the swarm vessels fell easily. Within hours, the battle turned from desperate defense to overwhelming victory. The swarm fleet scattered. Those that could still move fleeing the system. Those that remained were destroyed. On the ground, the swarm creatures simply stopped. They collapsed where they stood, their connection to the controlling intelligence severed. The soldiers could barely believe it. After days of constant fighting, the enemy was defeated. Dr. Na worked frantically in the field hospital. The strike team survivors were brought to her, many seriously wounded. Corporal Day was the worst. The claw strike had nearly killed him. Na and her team worked for 6 hours to save his life. When Day finally woke up, Princess Sarah was sitting beside his bed. Her arm was bandaged and she looked exhausted, but she smiled when she saw his eyes open. "You saved my life," she said quietly. "You took that blow meant for one. You almost died." Day tried to shrug, but winced in pain. Someone had to. "That is what you said before," Sarah said. "Always someone had to. Do all humans think like this?" "Most of us," Day replied. "We learned a long time ago that we are stronger when we protect each other. It is not about being heroes. It is just about doing what is right." Sarah reached out and took his hand. "I want to learn more about your people, about this way of thinking. Will you teach me?" "Sure," Day said with a small smile. "But you already know the most important lesson. You stood with us. You fought beside us. That is what it means to be human, even if you are not human." 3 days later, Queen Lyra held a ceremony in the palace courtyard. The building was damaged, but still standing. Thousands of people gathered, both human and Velrothi. The sky was clear for the first time in months, free of smoke and swarm vessels. Queen Lyra stood on the balcony wearing her crown and formal robes. Commander Tay stood beside her, along with Admiral Kwan, Captain G, and the other human commanders. Princess Sarah was there too, standing with Corporal Day, who was still recovering from his wounds. "My people," Lyra began, her voice carrying across the crowd, "we have survived. Against all odds, we still stand, but we did not survive alone. We survived because someone answered our call, because strangers became friends, and friends became family." She turned to face the humans. "For generations, my people believed we were superior. We thought we did not need others. We stood alone in our pride, and that pride nearly destroyed us. But you, humanity, you showed us what true strength means. True strength is not found in standing alone. It is found in standing together. The crowd cheered, both Velrathi and humans celebrating together. Lyra continued, I want to formally apologize to all species we treated poorly in our arrogance. We were wrong. And I want to thank the humans who risked everything for strangers. We can never repay this debt, but we can promise that we will never forget this lesson. From this day forward, the Velrathi and humanity are allies. More than allies. We are family. More cheers erupted. But Commander Tay raised his hand for quiet. He stepped forward. Your Majesty, you do not owe us anything. We did not come here for payment or reward. We came because it was right. But I will accept your offer of alliance not because of debt, but because I believe we are stronger together. All species. All worlds. United. Admiral Kwan spoke next. We would like to propose something. Let us create joint military academies where human and Velrathi soldiers train together. Let us share knowledge, technology, and culture. Let us build something that can protect all peaceful species from threats like the swarm. High Commander Mira, who had led the diversionary fleet during the final battle, stepped forward. I support this proposal. Our people have much to learn from each other. In the following weeks, the rebuilding began. Dr. Na stayed on Velrax Prime with a team of medical staff, helping to establish new hospitals. Engineer Yun worked with Velrathi scientists to develop better defensive technologies. Captain G became the first human ambassador to Velrath, living in the palace and working daily with Queen Lyra. Lieutenant Huan and Princess Sarah established a joint fighter academy. Students, both human and Velrathi, learned to combine the logical Velrathi strategies with the unpredictable human tactics. They became the finest pilots in the sector. Corporal Day recovered from his wounds and decided to stay on Velrax Prime. He helped train the Velrathi ground forces, teaching them human combat techniques. Princess Sarah trained alongside him, and a deep friendship grew between them. 2 months after the battle, Commander Tay prepared to leave Velrax Prime with the main fleet. Queen Lyra came to see him off. They stood in the hangar bay watching the crews prepare the ships. What will you do now? Lyra asked. Return to Earth. Report on what happened here. Rest a little. Tay smiled. Then probably answer the next distress call. You will keep doing this, helping strangers? Always, Tay said simply. It is what we do. Lyra looked at him with respect and affection. You have changed us, changed me. I was a queen who believed in superiority and isolation. Now I am a queen who believes in unity and cooperation. Thank you for that gift. You changed yourselves, Tay replied. We just reminded you that no one is truly alone unless they choose to be. As the human fleet prepared to leave, Queen Lyra asked one final question. What do you want from us in return for everything you have done? Tay thought for a moment, then smiled. Just remember this when someone else needs help. Pay it forward. Be for others what we tried to be for you. The human ships departed, their engines glowing bright as they accelerated toward hyperspace. On Velrax Prime, the Velrathi watched them go, knowing they had witnessed something special. They had seen what true heroism looked like. Not pride or power, but simple compassion and the willingness to help those in need. 6 months later, Commander Tay was on Earth, enjoying a rare moment of peace, when a new transmission arrived at United Earth Command. It was a distress call from a species called the Mira, a peaceful civilization being attacked by pirates. The message was desperate, asking if anyone would help them. Tay looked at the message, then at his crew who had gathered around him. Captain G smiled. Lieutenant Huan checked his fighter. Engineer Yun grabbed his tools. Dr. Na prepared her medical supplies. Plot a course, Commander Tay said. Let us go. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, racing toward another world that needed help. Behind them, on Velrax Prime, Queen Lyra received the same distress call. She looked at Princess Sarah, at Commander Mira, at all her people who had learned what it meant to stand together. "Prepare the fleet," Lyra ordered. "We are going to help them. It is what families do." And so the alliance grew, spreading across the galaxy. Humans and Velrathi working together, answering calls for help, building bridges instead of walls. They became known as the Responders, species who would always answer when someone needed them. They proved that the greatest strength in the universe was not found in weapons or technology, but in the simple willingness to care for others. The galaxy was still dangerous. There were still threats and darkness. But now there was also hope, carried by those who understood that no one should ever face the darkness alone.